And North Korea fires 2 short-range projectiles into the East Sea, its first apparent missile launch this year. A source says the regime is trying to consolidate its power at home by redirecting attention internationally. It's 5 p.m. here in Seoul. From today on Arirang TV, this will be the hour for our economy news, just a little later than before. Thank you for joining us. I'm Devin Whiting. We start with the coronavirus outbreak in South Korea. The number of confirmed cases in the country is now more than 4,200, with a total death toll of 26. And just an hour ago, the South Korean government announced that it'll postpone the beginning of the new school year by another 2 weeks. For more, we have our Oh Jung-hee on the line. Jung-hee, tell us more about the school delay.
Devin, South Korea is postponing the start of the spring semester by another 2 weeks from March 9 to March 23rd for kindergartens, elementary, middle, and high schools across the nation. That's according to Seoul's Education Minister Yoo Eun-hye at a press briefing an hour ago. In late February, the government had already delayed the spring semester by 1 week from March 2nd to March 9th. So in total, it'll be a 3-week delay to the spring semester. The Education Minister explained that the coming 2 weeks will be critical in seeing whether the coronavirus outbreak dies down, and the government will need another week afterwards to judge whether studying at schools will be possible. She also cited the fact that there's an increasing number of children and teen patients. To make up for the delay, schools will be providing online content and teachers will take care of the students online. Universities across the country are also told to hold remote classes via online or other formats of their choice until the COVID-19 outbreak dies down.
So it seems the coronavirus is impacting virtually all aspects of life, at least in some way, it seems. Jung-hee, give us an update on the confirmed cases in South Korea.
Devin, the number of confirmed patients here in South Korea stands at 4,212. That's an increase of 476 cases compared to Sunday. Of those, 377 are concentrated in the southeastern city of Daegu, bringing the total in Daegu to over 3,000. The surrounding Gyeongsangbuk-do province saw around 70 new cases for a total of more than 600. Confirmed today, there were 4 more deaths, bringing South Korea's death toll now to 26. What's saddening is that 4 of the recent deaths were of those who'd been waiting to be hospitalized. According to the health authorities, out of nearly 3,100 confirmed patients, only about 1,000 are hospitalized. The rest are isolating themselves. So to make sure all confirmed patients get the necessary treatment, the government is to hospitalize those with serious symptoms first and put them into hermetically sealed medical centers. Those with mild symptoms will be taken care of in separate designated living facilities. That's all from me for now. Back to you.
All right, Oh Jung-hee reporting there. Thank you very much. Now, more and more countries are restricting entry from South Korea due to fears over the coronavirus. Seoul's foreign ministry is working to reduce the inconvenience caused to Koreans traveling overseas. Our Hong Yu reports.
At least 80 countries or regions within countries are restricting the entry of people coming from South Korea. That is more than 40% of UN member states who have restricted entry, either through stronger quarantine measures or outright entry bans. 36 countries have imposed an entry ban, with Turkey joining the group on Sunday. Vietnam, one of South Korea's major New Southern Policy partner states, has stopped visa-free entry for Koreans and imposed a total entry ban for South Koreans that have departed from or transferred in Daegu or Gyeongsangbuk-do province. Koreans with visas who are coming from a different region have to self-quarantine for 2 weeks. This decision comes right after Seoul's Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa and her Vietnamese counterpart discussed the issue over the phone. Seoul's foreign ministry has also lodged a complaint over Vietnam's unannounced ban on Korean flights landing in that country. An Asiana Airlines flight was turned back while en route to Hanoi on Saturday after authorities there refused to let the plane land. The ministry summoned the Vietnamese ambassador to Seoul to complain about the inconvenience caused. And 44 other countries, along with some parts of China, have strengthened their entrance screening procedures. Kazakhstan and Nigeria are the latest to up their screenings. Nigeria is conducting a self-quarantine for foreigners coming in from South Korea, China, Italy, Iran, and Japan. In response to a growing number of countries restricting the entry of people traveling from South Korea, the Foreign Ministry is reassuring countries by informing them transparently about the government measures to combat COVID-19. For instance, Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa spoke with her counterpart from Canada on Monday to assure Canada that South Korea is doing its utmost to contain the spread. Canada has so far not imposed restrictions on travelers from South Korea. Hong-yu, Arirang News.
North Korea conducted its first missile launch of the year this afternoon, firing 2 projectiles towards the East Sea. Its most recent launch was 95 days ago. Our Defense Ministry correspondent Kim Ji-yeon has the details.
South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff has confirmed that North Korea fired 2 short-range ballistic missiles from Wonsan towards the East Sea on Monday afternoon at around 12:37 p.m. The Joint Chiefs said the maximum flight altitude was some 35 kilometers and the flight distance was around 240 kilometers. It said they were fired some 20 seconds apart from transporter erector launchers. The South Korean military is currently monitoring the situation while maintaining a defense posture in case of additional launches and is closely working with the U.S. to verify more information about this latest launch. The Joint Chiefs called for the North to refrain from engaging in such actions that do not help in lowering military tensions on the Korean peninsula. That message was reiterated by Cheongwade, which convened an emergency meeting of security-related ministers Monday afternoon, presided over by National Security Director Chung Eui-yong to discuss the missile launch. It also expressed strong concern about North Korea's continued strike drills around Wonsan initiated last Friday. The Joint Chiefs sees the recent move as a way for the North Korean regime to consolidate power within North Korea. A South Korean military source says the timing of the launch signifies that the coronavirus situation in North Korea is actually so serious that could even threaten the stability of the regime, although the North has claimed that it does not have a single confirmed case. The latest launch also comes despite the postponement by South Korea and the U.S. of the combined command post training that was initially slated for later this month. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
South Korea's ruling party and the government have agreed on the need for a swift and aggressive fiscal injection to help tackle the COVID-19 outbreak. The 2 sides met this morning to discuss a supplementary budget, which the government aims to submit to the National Assembly on Thursday. The exact size is yet to be determined, but officials are forecasting more than the $5.1 billion that was set aside to handle the 2015 MERS outbreak.
We have the dual task of curbing the coronavirus outbreak as well as preventing a shrink in the economy. The extra budget will be the first step to dealing with those 2 tasks. In order to take care of the issues, we will need a significant fiscal injection.
The 2 sides agreed that the money should be directed to the most urgent areas such as quarantine measures and helping small businesses hurt by the outbreak. Funds will also be set aside for the hardest hit areas, the southeastern city of Daegu and Gyeongsang-Bukdo province. They said it's important people feel the impact of the extra budget, especially the vulnerable. The ruling party and government aim to have the bill passed before the current National Assembly session ends on March 17th. Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Dr. Yang Jun-seok, Professor of Economics at the Catholic University of Korea. Professor Yang, thank you for coming on today, now at a slightly different time.
Happy to be here.
Well, last week, of course, we saw the worst week on Wall Street in a decade or more, with the main indexes down 4% on Friday. Similar declines in the days before that. Today, Korean stocks got a little bump, though, after similarly rough few sessions. What's the story in the global markets and here in Korea?
Okay, well, as you mentioned, the United States had a really bad month of February. In the early February, everybody was really happy because the stock markets are heading toward historical highs. And then just 10 days later, we had unprecedented lows. We had 52-week lows in some of the markets. International markets have been more or less following the U.S. markets. So when the U.S. markets tanked, the Japanese and European markets and Korean markets as well tanked as well. Korea, KOSPI, and KOSDAQ lost about 8% of their value last week. As you mentioned, the things are going well for KOSPI and KOSDAQ today. And if you look at the U.S. stock market futures. The actual stock market hasn't opened yet, but if you look at just the futures, then over the weekend the price has risen, and that's probably because over the weekend the Fed Chairman Powell said that he's ready to lower the interest rates if he believed that the economy situation in the economy warranted it due to the coronavirus. Now, I'm not convinced that it's the right time to lower the interest rate in the United States, but I think that willingness by Chairman Powell to lower the interest rate has given new hopes to the stock market, and will probably do somewhat well in the U.S. market today and Korean market, unless you get some really bad news between now and tomorrow morning. Will follow and do a little bit better tomorrow as well. But still, I don't think it's healthy for the stock market to be overly dependent on what the Fed is going to do in the short term for the interest rate.
Well, now we have data showing South Korea's exports were up in February, surprisingly, perhaps, despite the coronavirus situation. How did that happen, and what stands out to you in these numbers?
Okay, well, if you look at the details, then it's not as happy a news as it was interpreted as. If you look at the total amount of the February exports, it rose by 4.5% over the amount that we had last February. Imports also rose by 1.4%. So at least if you look at the total numbers, then you can interpret the numbers as saying that we are starting to come out of the bottom. But the problem is, if you compare the working days of this February versus last year's February, we have about 3.5 more working days because, well, last year the Lunar New Year's fell on February, whereas this year it fell on January. Also, this year is a leap year, so we have one extra working day. So if we look at exports per working day, then it actually fell by 11.7%. So a lot of government people and the analysts are actually taking this as not so good news. Now, things leading the exports is semiconductor exports. It rose by 15.4%, and both the volume of exports and the prices went up. But there is concern that the reason that the semiconductor exports went up so quickly is that the Chinese buyers and other international buyers of semiconductors are worried that Korean manufacturers will not be able to produce semiconductors if the coronavirus gets worse. So they're stocking up so that it won't build a bottleneck. Now, if this is true, then that means that we're sort of feeding off the demand for latter part of the year rather than through any new demand. So there's a chance that even if COVID virus doesn't spread, because all the buyers are stocking up on semiconductors, semiconductor demand and prices will actually fall in the latter part of the year. But there is some good news as well. Korean exports to the United States and ASEAN went up, and machinery, auto parts, home electronics, and wireless communication equipment exports went up as well. So it's a bit of a mixed news, but if you interpret the numbers, I'd say that, sorry to say that bad news maybe slightly outweighs the good news.
All right, all very interesting points there. A lot more complicated than it might seem. So, but also lots to look at this week in terms of official numbers, some figures coming out on trade, some on the incomes of South Korean households last year. What's coming up this week?
Okay, well, as you mentioned, the current account figures for the fourth quarter are coming out, and we're likely to see a current account surplus because most of the current account surplus is goods trade, and we know what the good trade numbers were for January, and it will be positive, but exports and imports are likely to be going down, and then for the income figures, well, it closely tracks the GDP growth figures, so it's about probably going to be somewhere around 2%, but maybe a bit higher because, well, the income figures, the exchange rates and Korean won was strong last year. And then another interesting statistic coming out this week is consumer price index for February. We're seeing now that the COVID-19 virus is hitting the demand very hard, and consumer price index for February may show us exactly how much the COVID virus is hitting the demand for Korean goods within the domestic economy. On the foreign side, U.S. side, we have the unemployment rate and the trade account coming up. The unemployment rate will show whether the U.S. Growth trend is likely to continue for this year, and that's important because the United States is practically the only economy that was really growing strongly last year, as well as the trade accounts because, well, if the trade deficit is shown to have worsened, then President Trump, during his re-election campaign this year, is probably going to hit protectionist policies harder.
All right, Professor Young, we'll be looking ahead for those figures. Thank you so much for sharing your insights today.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching.